Olá, meus caros amigos, bem-vindos a bordo de mais um programa Raul Ferreira Netto Sem Limites. Primeiramente, como sempre faço, quero agradecer a presença de cada um de vocês. Esse programa é gravado, então eu conto com a sua participação nos comentários. Farei o melhor para respondê-los. Quero agradecer a Porcelaneca pelo carinho. Thiago e Rebeca, obrigado pelo apoio que vocês nos dão. Hoje temos um convidado super especial. A entrevista, aliás, pessoal, vocês que vão assistir essa entrevista agora, ela vai ser totalmente em inglês, vai estar legendada, por isso que a gente fez esse programa gravado. Quem gostar de ouvir em inglês e não precisar da legenda, vai se divertir, porque eu tô com um cara... Eu não sei a faixa etária exatamente de quem tá assistindo, mas quem aí tiver uma faixa etária de uns 40 anos, com certeza viu esse cara lá no começo e acompanhando o trabalho dele também, depois de muito tempo. Afinal de contas, o Jamaica Abaixo de Zero, o filme Cool Runnings, e o New York Undercover, que é uma série que faz 30 anos esse ano. E eu vou conversar com um ator sensacional, Malik Yoba. Thank you so much.
Obrigado.
Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and speaking with you.
Thank you. That was good. I understood.
You got it. What I said?
10%
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you say sem limites, right?
Exactly.
Malik, let's begin a little bit about your talking about your experience here in Brazil. You just arrived, first time here.
El primero tiempo.
Primera vez.
Primera vez.
Primera vez.
There you go.
So you came here what for leisure, for business, for what?
For business, yeah, to learn.
You came to learn.
Yes, my first time here in Sao Paulo. I came here on a dual mission of economic development, entertainment. So I'm going to be traveling between here and Salvador Bahia. There's a guy named Nana Balfour who I met at a summit in New Orleans back in November. Wells Fargo Bank put it together. It's called the Black Executive Leadership Summit, to bring entrepreneurs and C-suite executives together to do business. And so he and I met. He told me what he was doing in the country. He's got a number of businesses. Zeffirino shoes? You know,
Zeffirino.
Yeah,
I think so.
That's one of his companies.
Cool.
And Twins for Peace is one on the fashion side. And then he has some real estate that he's doing. He's got a tech company. So anyway, I'm doing a lot of real estate in America and now internationally. And so doing a film summit tomorrow, and then I'm going to go to Salvador too.
Matter of fact, Twins for Peace is a brand that sponsored André, which I want to send a big hug, who puts us together to meet today from the movie Traction, the director of movie Traction. Right, He's also involved with that.
So he was one of the producers of that film.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the real estate mixtapes.
Yes.
That's a documentary, and the project is very nice. The little I know about, and I want to know a little bit more from you. It's a very, very intelligent and incredible way of taking opportunities to, unprivileged people. So tell me a little bit about the documentary and how that impacts your career.
So obviously, as you said, the intro, I've been doing film for 31 years. And so I get to see the impact that film has, not just from like one of your favorite movies, Cool Runnings. Right?
Yes.
You love what that film does to you, right? It motivates you to take action or feel good, whatever. So the power of film is real, storytelling. And so I've been involved with real estate development in the States since 2007. The whole time I've been doing it, I've been thinking a lot about how do I share the information that I'm learning about how the built environment comes together, particularly in communities where people don't have access to this information. And so art often imitates life. I was doing a show called God Friended Me, where my character was a real estate developer. This was in 2018. And while shooting the show, I thought about how I wanted to use film to tell real estate stories, invite young people of color, as we stay in the States, mostly Black kids that have been left out of that business, and use film to teach people. And so in 2019,
teach what exactly? When you say real estate, just so I can understand how you put that together with film, is it to develop people into understanding what real estate means for you to make
Yeah, so
think about the future?
Yeah, so you know, we're in Brazil, right?
Mhm.
Largest population of African descendants
Mhm.
outside of Africa. How did they get here? We used to be the real estate, number one, right?
Okay.
So in the States, like a lot of business terms, mortgages, bonds, stocks, comes from the language of enslaved people.
Okay.
And so when you think about in America, right, real estate is the quickest way to build wealth, right, from generation after generation.
Mhm.
In America, we have a 400-year, white people have had a 400-year head start in terms of every aspect
Gotcha.
of economic development, but real estate specifically. So for me, it was about helping people, one, understand how we got here
Mhm.
and who's in this space that's making a difference, and how do we share information about who's doing what.
But will it be exclusive for Black persons?
No,
or
everyone's going to learn.
Okay.
But my mission was to make sure that in a country like America, where you have federal law,
Okay.
which prohibited Black people from owning real estate,
Mhm.
right? Prohibited neighborhoods from being invested upon.
Mhm.
And so in America, real estate taxes drive education, right?
Mhm.
So it's important to live in a certain neighborhood so
Right.
you get certain
Good
education for
schools
your
and that
kids.
public school.
Right. And
depending-
so when you talk about how do you level the playing field
Right.
and increase the knowledge base of community, right? Like even today, so we were at Libertad.
Liberdade, bairro
right?
Liberdade, yeah.
So historically, that was
Yes.
an African area, right?
Yes.
Development comes, those people are pushed out, right? They have no equity, no ownership. And so for me, being a real estate developer, understanding how politics plays into it, how finance plays into it, design, the trades,
Mhm.
how marketing, how
And you use the whole film thing.
so you
to
use
push,
film
yeah.
to tell stories
Mhm.
of people
Perfect.
who are doing different aspects. And so initially the idea was I want to take people on a journey with me, like have cameras follow me as I go through my life.
Mhm.
And so as I was thinking about it, I said, you know, I want to bring some young people along. So I had 6, 7 people from the age of 18 to 38 travel with me for 6 weeks in the summer of 2019.
While you're teaching everything to them.
No, they're just like, they sit here with me and you, right? If
Right.
you were a developer and I'm having a conversation, I have cameras rolling, they're learning.
Cool.
So they get to meet billionaires, millionaires, architects, designers, politicians, right? And so as they're having this experience, just being exposed to the information, how we, you know, tell those stories on film. So it's one thing to film it.
Right.
It's another thing to edit it. So
Right.
it's called a real estate mixtape because when I was editing, I was thinking like a DJ.
Okay,
right?
yeah, the mixtapes for
Yeah, here's let me give you 5 minutes
got
or
you
2
now.
minutes of this,
Oh,
30
okay.
seconds of that, put the right music,
Right.
put in slow motion. Now all of a sudden, something like real estate now becomes emotional, right? Because the stories you're hearing, how the music underscores it, how it's edited, right? And then that became the basis of a curriculum for high school students. So in New York, it's called I Build New York.
Oh, they have it already going
So
on
we
in New York.
introduced,
Okay.
so we use that in the public school system
Okay.
to introduce high school kids to the real estate business.
Oh, very
right?
nice.
And then that leads to kids getting scholarships, getting internships, getting jobs, right? And so now you're able to educate people in a very simple way.
Now, when you bring this idea to Brazil, we run into a few problems over here that people mention. Are you going to bring in politics into this to make it happen, or is all private initiative?
I'm not sure. I don't know how Brazil works. That's why I'm here. So
yeah,
I'm here.
it's very nice for you to look into that
Yeah.
because it's a country that lacks a lot of opportunity, and this idea is amazing.
Right.
And especially you go into Salvador, which is
Right.
a nice, an area where you can explore very much.
Right. So I know in Salvador, so Nana owns the building, right? It's a mixed use. So on the ground floor, there's commercial space for Twins for Peace and the Zeffirino shoes, right? There's going to be an event space. There's going to be a co-working space and then like an Airbnb, right? So in that area where he bought this property, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Oh, okay.
So his idea is, how do we bring attention to what I'm doing from an economic development perspective? How do we have more people begin to look at this area for redevelopment? what's the best way to communicate that? Use film. So we'll be shooting that. We'll use that content, push it out, share it with people.
And will you be also doing some fiction with a lot of these people that you're gonna have contact with? You're gonna develop new scripts, new stories?
I do. So as a company, my company is called Yoba Development, right? And there's 3 verticals: real estate, education, and media.
Okay.
So on the media side, yes, there's unscripted content, there's scripted content, podcasts, right? Newspaper, magazines, all teaching people about how this works. So, if you think of like an Architectural Digest, right? You know that magazine?
Yeah.
Right? If you look through the pages, you don't really see our stories.
Right.
But we're in that space. We're designers, we're architects, we're furniture makers, we're all these things. But who's telling those stories?
I see. Yeah, those 400 years.
So, yeah.
And aside from bringing this documentary, coming to Brazil is your first time. Do you think the culture over here is very, very similar to something that you can relate to? Bringing,
Well, just driving down. I mean, we could be anywhere, right? I'm driving. A few minutes ago, I thought, oh, this looks like Seoul, Korea.
You're from Bronx, right? From the Bronx.
I'm from the
New
Bronx.
York.
I live in Brooklyn, right? This could be Brooklyn. This could be so many places in America. This could be LA. This could be Johannesburg, where I just left last week. So, yeah, I think that in terms of from an architectural perspective and how infrastructure, cities, around the world are similar in that sense. And you look at the community, every single person you see out in the streets, you see the same people in New York.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Economically, do you think you're going to explore this to other countries? Now you're in Brazil. What's your idea? And
so I just came from Johannesburg. I was there for the Joburg Film Festival, but I was also meeting with real estate developers there, architects, politicians, people in finance. I was shooting content. I was speaking at the University of Johannesburg School of Architecture. In fact, the program that they have there, it's called a Unit 20. So those students actually use storytelling to enter architecture, which I thought was a fascinating idea. So the professor grew up, his father owned a movie theater in Ghana, and he always loved movies. And so when he became an architect, he always thought about how, the relationship between architecture and filmmaking. And so, if we're in a movie set, right? We're
like art design, right?
Right? Yeah, like there's architectural elements in this physical space.
Right.
And so they teach the students to think about architecture through storytelling. So, for instance, one of the students told a story about a woman who's you don't know where she is. She's telling a story about a love relationship. And you begin to realize the woman's in a mental institution.
Wow. And
then she talked about how mental institutions are designed in a way in that country where the people who, from a government perspective, from a design perspective, they don't really take mental health seriously.
They just throw at them.
And so they don't think about how the physical environment of a person in a mental institution is impacted by lighting, natural light, by air, by space.
Painting on the wall.
Right. So the student did a presentation where she told this whole story, and then they're going to turn that into like a short film to talk about architecture, which I thought was fascinating.
This is very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice angle to the, Yeah, because when you think about film and you bring this idea, to explore real estate in the sense of, okay, let's think about where we are. Like you said, we're here in Sao Paulo. We could be anywhere.
Right.
And I'm trying to understand, to connect the opportunity you're going to bring to a lot of people that need it,
Well, I can tell you, so I've been in over 50 cities in America. So the opportunity, number one, just seeing someone like myself, right? People have watched me for 30 years on movies and TV and said, oh, that's Malik Yoba, right? So there's already that accessibility. Then you're watching me on film doing my real estate thing. So all of a sudden, someone goes, wow, I never knew that was possible. If he did it, I can do it. Oh, this is what architects really do. Oh, this is what developers really do. Oh, these are the challenges getting financing. Oh, this is what you need politically in order to get site control of a particular piece of land. So using film as a person, well, let me back up. My background is actually in education.
Okay.
So from 40 years ago, I was working in organizations that use art to communicate ideas, no matter what they were. So I came into it already knowing if I use film, that's one way to communicate information that someone may not want to sit in the classroom and read a book in order to get this, right? So
they need to associate with something else that they're seeing,
yeah,
that they're
yeah,
looking
yeah.
at.
And you can create a different kind of emotional response. Like I said, you put something in slow motion
Mhm.
and put the right
Yeah,
music.
the
all of a
mixtape,
sudden,
that's the mixtape.
yeah, you feel
Yeah,
a
yeah.
certain way, right? So it's very powerful. So it's created a ton of opportunities for me personally and for a whole bunch of other people. So like those 7 young people I mentioned who I took on the road, right? One of the young men, as a for instance, never met a real estate agent in his life. Never knew one, didn't know anybody who did it. He became the star of my documentary. As a result of spending 6 weeks meeting all these people, he moved out of New York, out of the hood in Harlem, moved to California, got his
To work with real estate.
got his real estate license. Now his cousin watched him. She never knew a real estate agent. Now she's getting her license, and she said to him, "We should start a TV show to tell our story about where we've come from and where we're going in real estate." That's just one example.
And real estate is all about relationship, right? When you buying, selling, or showing, when
yeah,
you're
I think it's everything, right? It's relationships.
it's feeling the person,
it's
it's understanding
feeling-
what the person needs, is
Even
looking
in
for.
terms of
What's
being an agent.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm thinking, like, for them, like you mentioned, that person who followed you and then his cousin.
Right.
In other words, they have to look at it and see, wow, how can I work with this? How can I, be that?
Right.
So it brings a lot of that whole understanding psychologically.
Yeah, yeah. And that's just one aspect of it. For someone else, their focus might be architecture. For someone else, their focus might be finance. For someone else, they might want to do mortgages,
Okay.
right? So there's different aspects of it. But for me, it just became like I started buying real estate in my 20s, and I saw what could happen, right, through ownership.
You started working with that
Yeah.
in your 20s,
Yeah.
so already thinking about
investing
okay.
and learning the economic benefit of that. And so for me, and I'm a kid who grew up in the hood, right? If you look at New York City and the Bronx and Harlem in the 70s and 80s, I was born in the 60s, it was empty lots, a lot of rubble, drug addicts, right? You look at Harlem now, it's completely developed, right? Who did that? Not the people who were born and raised there. They didn't have the information.
And that's what you want to change.
So now something that was looked at as lacking value is now so valuable that people who grew up there can no longer even afford to live there. So if we don't have access to this process, then each generation that's born is going to be born into the same
Doing the same
circumstance.
thing. Speaking of that, it calls out my attention. Do you know about the favelas here in Brazil?
Yeah, of course.
How do you see the different opportunities that this can bring to people to actually look at? Because it's very interesting what you're saying, because people who live in favelas can actually look at where they live and see, how can we change this? And then I put a second question to it. Do you think people that are there, they want to change the way it is?
What I know about human beings, no matter where you go, I just left Colombia. Like I said, I was in South Africa last week, right? I travel all over the world. What I know about humans, everybody wants to feel safe. People want to feel loved. They want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. They want to feel respected. They want to feel they have an opportunity to grow from any particular circumstance, right? The challenge when people are born in places like favelas or Compton or Oakland or Detroit or Harlem or
New Orleans,
Soweto or South Side of London, right? Wherever you might be, if you don't see a path out of that situation, you're going to believe that this is all you're worthy of, right? And so those of us, in my opinion, who have the opportunity to have access to information and opportunity, you have a responsibility to make sure that I have to care for your kid. I don't have to, I don't know you and your wife, right? Or you've got multiple children, right? I don't have to know your children to feel that I have to care for them. Most people don't think that way. Most people think, I'm going to take care of mine, you take care of you.
Not as a community.
Right. But how I'm built, how I'm made, is to make sure that as I learn, I'm going to bring some other people along. My whole life, my film career started not by me running around New York trying to be an actor. My film career started because I used to run a youth program in New York City, teaching at high school level, right? But we had a theater company that was part of the organization. I grew up doing theater, but I never liked the idea of other people telling me when I can work. So for me, the idea of pursuing being an actor meant that you had to keep auditioning for other people to say you, right? I've always been an entrepreneur ever since I was a little kid, delivering newspapers in streets, selling ices on the street, being a bicycle messenger. Those were all independent. I was an independent contractor, so I ran small little businesses since I was 17 years old. Before, younger than that, 8 years old, I had my newspaper route in Harlem. But I love working with kids, and a lot of that came from being a kid that teachers didn't always understand.
They had a vision
of me that wasn't my vision of myself. So I was like, that's a problem. So I'm going to study education, and I'm going to study musical theater coming out of high school. That was the goal.
And how'd you land your first role?
The youth program I was working for ran out of money one summer of 1989. I told my boss I will volunteer for the summer. I show up to work one day, there's a sign on the wall for an audition for a movie. And it was paying $325 a day.
That's good.
It was great.
For that time,
I was 20 years old. I never made $325 a day. So I went and auditioned, and I got that movie. That movie led to Cool Runnings and New York Undercover.
Which movie was it?
It's a movie called Seriously Fresh.
Okay.
And the same casting director from that movie casted me in Cool Runnings. And I'm sorry, I got that movie, and then the guy that wrote that movie told me about the audition for Cool Runnings.
Okay.
And that Cool Runnings, the casting director, Jackie Brown, casted me in Cool Runnings and New York Undercover. And then my life took a turn for 30 years.
Going back a little bit, yeah, I want to go back to that, but going back to the when we mentioned about the favelas, when you say that people have to have that understanding that, you know, they can be better. Let's say that. What I feel is that people, they want to leave where it's bad. They don't want to make good where they are.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
I was that guy too. So
how do we change that?
So part of what drives my passion is because I was that guy.
Okay, they wanted to leave.
When I grew up in Harlem, right, and grew up in the South Bronx, I saw the empty lots. I saw the heroin addicts, saw the crackheads. I used to dream about being a billionaire so I could put buildings there. But when I made enough money well, first of all, I left my that neighborhood when I was younger, before I started making money. But I didn't go back and invest in that community. I wanted to live by Central Park. You know, Alec Baldwin was my neighbor. Madonna lived near me. I made some money, so I have to come up. I didn't understand real estate in my 20s like I understand it now. And so once I started understanding it, then I became even more determined to help people understand. The only way you can have value over here is if you undervalue something here. Because if everything is worth the same value, who's winning?
Yeah.
Right? And so that's capitalism. But that's also a great flaw in capitalism. America, we talk about we're the greatest country.
Because you need to have that gap.
Yeah. But do you?
No.
Because you can go to Monaco, you can go to Switzerland.
Exactly.
You can see examples of, even if you go to Norway, right? I mean, obviously those social democracies, but I think that more importantly, you know, I believe we just need to promote the idea and the process on how we can level the playing field. And that's all I've ever been doing.
And in a way that stays.
That stays, right? How do you do that? Through education.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I can't and work ethic. I can't, I can give you the information, but you're going to have to do the work.
Right.
Right? And so for me, I feel like the least I can do is give you the information.
Right.
Now, if you decide you want to take this information and run with it, you can build something. just like I didn't go to school for real estate development. I learned because I shared my dream with some guys in New York. I said, hey, man, there's a guy named Dan Bythwood. So his cousin Reggie used to write on New York Undercover. And so I met Dan on the set of New York Undercover in like 1996. In 2007, I was raising money for my theater company. I was producing touring shows at the time. So we reconnected. And I said, oh, and by the way, I really want to learn real estate development. He said, really? Come with me to Baltimore. So I went down to Baltimore. The very first meeting I ever had learning anything about real estate development was with the city, with the person who was in charge of land use and different city council people. So my first introduction to development was learning how the city and private, so public-private partnerships make.
Yeah, but you were eager to learn. Like you're a guy, you're above the curve. That's the thing, because when you say you can give me information, what I do with depends on me. That's something very common, unfortunately, with people. You give them all the information, and here, especially in Brazil, and a lot of places that we know, unfortunately, do that. The reason why I'm pointing this out so much is because the initiative, the idea, the project is amazing, and it would be really beautiful to see that this remains. The people understand what it really means, so that they can. So how you're coming here to begin,
to explore,
and,
right?
And how will it be the continuation? The continuation.
So I'll have to come back in a year, and after I figure some things out on this trip, I'll tell you what I learned.
Good.
But what I have been told is there are people who care about these same things. So I'm meeting some of those people tonight for dinner. I'll meet some of them in Salvador, right? The man who brought me here, he's not even from here. He's originally from Ghana, right? But he's one of those people who sees opportunity from an economic development perspective and says, I'm going to make that work and I'm going to grow that. And so I'm really curious, right? African descendant population is what, 56%?
I don't know that number,
I
but
heard that
lot,
number today from a historian.
But it's a lot.
I heard it today, right? And so I told you I just left Africa, right? And so for me, when we think about global economies, Africa is the last place that everyone understands all the riches. That's why Wakanda was made, right? Wakanda is fictional, but it's really what's happening right now in Africa. The Chinese really there, the Russians are there. Everyone, Europeans have been there forever exploiting Africa, right? So what you have is people of the African diaspora that are understanding the assignment, that understand that when I'm in Lagos, Nigeria, or if I'm in Cote d'Ivoire, or I'm in London, I'm in Kingston, I'm in New York, I'm in Brazil, people are thinking like we have to tell these stories, we have to share this information, we have to work together so that from a global economy perspective, we see something we've never seen in anybody's lifetime, right? Since, Mansa Musa was the most wealthy person ever. That's the 13th century. So a whole lot has happened.
Bringing that awareness to everybody.
Yeah, like who you really are, what you really deserve, right? Not saying I'm going to take anything from somebody that doesn't look like me. That's what happened to us, right? Historically, it's always been like, no.
Yeah, the idea is not revenge. The
Ever.
idea is to make it, let's just look at what is right.
Right, so that everybody can eat.
Very, very good. Now, before we go, because I know we have a short time, but I want to speak a little bit about movies.
Let's do it.
Let's do that. Like I said at the beginning of this interview, Cool Runnings is one of my dear movies that I have in my heart.
Look at the way you're smiling. I love that.
No, but it's true.
I love it.
But it's so true because I remember the movie. I remember everything, and it's a true story, right?
Based on a true story. Yeah.
Based on a true story. And I asked you already how you got casted to Cool Runnings. Let's go in a little bit into that whole vibe you lived during the film. It was your second film.
Yes. It was actually my third, but it was my first feature film.
Okay.
So the first film I did in 1989, and here's a funny story about that, just to bring it back to New York Undercover too. So I'm on the set of the film, and the guy that wrote it, his name is Jamal Joseph, and he had just gotten out of doing 10 years in prison for his role in the Black Panther Party. So we're on set, and we're talking about his history, and he had written a film called Liberated Territory. And he's like, you're going to play me in this movie when I was 15 years old, right? So I loved his story. I said, hey, I want you to come talk to my kids in my program about your experience in the Black Panther Party. So that happens on set. I go home from set. I'm on the subway. I see two guys sitting there. I'm looking over, and it looks like they're reading a movie script. So when I'm about to get off the subway, I look down, and I say, hey, are you guys actors? They're like, yeah. We're reading this script by a guy named Jamal Joseph. So the movie I'm working on, they're reading his script, the very movie that he says he wants me to play.
Wow.
The two guys that were reading, Reggie Bythewood, who became a writer on New York Undercover, and Alan Payne, who did a bunch of movies, starting with New Jack City with Wesley Snipes. And so that's how I first met Reggie Bythewood on the set, on the subway. And then years later, not even that long, like 4 years later, he becomes a writer on New York Undercover. And Jamal is the person who called me up and said, hey, Malik, they're doing this movie about the Jamaican bobsled team. Call this woman Jackie Brown audition for the film.
Man, that movie. Yeah, that's a good story.
Yeah,
man.
So that's how it all began. Yeah.
New York Undercover. Because I'm gonna start asking you about how I was working with John Candy and how
go ahead, man.
stuff. Because
John Candy was great.
The thing is that.
So let me ask you a question though.
Okay, go ahead.
What do you love about that movie?
What, the Cool Runnings?
Yeah, look how your face lightens up, bro.
Let me tell you. It's hard to say because I remember watching this film over and over and over again because I love sports. I'm an ex-athlete, playing soccer and American football. I was living in the U.S. during that time, and that whole thing with the four main characters, each had such a distinct personality. You had the leader, you had the guy who was the prince, there was the rich guy, and then you had the bad guy, like, come on, man, it was you, and you had the funny, goofy guy.
Right.
So you put that together and you say, well, they're Jamaican. They don't know ice.
Right.
How can you put them on an ice sport? Prejudice right there and then. But as an athlete, you think, dude, the fastest guys. So as long as you teach them how not to slip, the rest they can do. And every detail in that movie, the conflicts, the small things, but the sport, the super, the whole thing of when you guys are, racing and getting the better time, and when you guys this is the best run. It gives me goosebumps.
We crash.
And everybody's, they're gone.
Right.
And that editing, the directing, the montage is exactly when you have that everybody, they screen off and you guys are coming back. Dude, it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because
as somebody
over
tragedy.
Yes. Yeah. But the whole thing of like, no, we will cross this.
Right.
Ayrton Senna is a race car driver, very famous here in Brazil. And he's a guy that has that same thing. He was out of gas in a race. Formula One race car driver. He goes out of the car and he starts pushing it.
I've seen that. That's
so
a famous.
That's the same, idea. So that's what for me.
And it's funny you mentioned Formula One because his Cool Runnings is Lewis Hamilton's favorite movie.
Really?
He's Jamaican. He's Jamaican, right? He was a guy. He wasn't a rich kid, right? His father's Jamaican.
Mm-hmm.
Used to have to put his pennies together to teach him how to kart race, and now he became the greatest, ever in the history of Formula One.
So that's why. Why do I like the movie? Which part?
No, but I love that. I love, we spent a lot of last year as a cast traveling around doing like Comic-Cons. So we get to meet 2 and 3 generations. Friend of mine, one of my best friends, actually, Armando Cabral, actually is from Portugal. Shoe designer, model. He just watched the movie with his kids who are now 11 and 9 or 8. And they just left me a message. I just listened to it yesterday, and what they got from the film. And I love that. Like, so I don't know how old you are, but
I'm 42.
Okay, 42. And so we can go to these, like Comic-Con, you meet like an 11-year-old kid, the 40-something-year-old parent, and then the 60-something-year-old grandparent. They all love the film. So and that's a great idea. I have a 15-year-old and 11 and 8. They haven't seen it?
5 and a 2. I'm gonna sit with them. different moments, but I'm gonna watch with them.
Yeah,
No, they
yeah.
haven't seen. Well, the 11 and actually no, because they live in no, but I don't think they have seen it because you know it's something that it would be nice for me to actually sit down with them and see watch this
Right.
and then watch this show
Right.
where I'm here with you.
Right.
Right. Undercover, New York Undercover.
Yep.
This is something that got you really like in the business, like not in the market. I would say how would we say that in the scene, in the movie scene, in the TV scene,
the mainstream,
mainstream.
Yeah.
How is that in New York? Is that the whole thing of like, oh, you're in LA or in New York? Did you ever think about moving out to LA?
I lived in LA for almost 20 years.
Oh, so you did it. You had to go.
But after New York Undercover, yeah.
But because you felt like you needed to go to the
No.
Because...
I actually reluctantly moved to LA.
Mm.
The first 8 years of my career was all in New York. So when I did Cool Runnings, New York Undercover, and a couple things that happened after that. But I got a series that shot in LA.
So then you stayed.
And then I was supposed to go for 5 months. I ended up staying that time for 10 years.
Very good. Yeah. And now, you have any new projects as an actor that you would like to invest in?
Invest in?
Invest in the sense of as an actor where you choose your roles now, right? You mean I
do. Well, yes. So like well, you always choose them, right? Whether you
but I'm saying choose in the sense of
it's a lot harder for me as an actor because I'm so busy
as a businessman,
right?
Yeah.
But I have a scripted series set in the world of real estate in New York. That's kind of like The Wire meets Billions. So prestige television, high end, really smart. I'm really excited about. So we've been working in pre-production on that. There are films I want to direct. I'm about to go back to South Africa to do a series called The Kings of Joburg, but that's only because my friend offered me the role and he's a producer on it. So it's easier when boss to boss says, hey, you want to partner on business, because I'm still asked to audition for a lot of projects. And for me, that's essentially asking for work, which is a problem because I'm a boss. So
it's a little bit of conflict, but at the same time, it's good.
If it's the right, so like working in South Africa, doing that series is important from a business perspective because it's an African production. I get to work in that territory, which brings you to Asia, it brings you to Europe, right? From a business perspective.
Right.
And there's other real estate interests in the region I want to get involved in, other storytelling I want to do. So it has to work with the mission of Yoba development for me at this point. And so, but there's that. There's a film I'm in. It was a Christmas movie I did last year that I'm also a producer on. There's other films I want to direct. So,
anything in Brazil?
Well, that's part of the reason
Let's
I'm
do
here,
it. Let's
to
do it
figure
here.
out some things. Where I'm gonna meet.
You should.
We're doing a film summit tomorrow.
Did you get a chance to watch some Brazilian film?
Well, one of my favorite films ever, City of God. Right. That's probably the first Brazilian film I've ever seen. But I've seen films since then, but I haven't seen any recently. But I've been trying to see the film that Nana did with the actors I'm actually going to meet tomorrow.
Do you notice a difference in the quality? No, I wouldn't say quality, but it would in a way be like photography, something that stands out and you notice it's not American. Let me explain why I'm asking this. Even though, like when you have a film that comes from the U.S., specifically U.S., Hollywood, comes to shoot over here, the way the film looks, it looks Hollywood. But films shot over here still miss something. What is it?
That's so many things.
But
I mean, that's so many things. I mean,
is it budget?
It's budget. It's understanding of film language. It's equipment. It's locations. It's post-production.
Post-production.
Right.
Yeah.
It's aesthetics. It's a lot of things. But, right, back to City of God.
City of God is something that,
that's an exquisite film. And what's the other one?
Tropa de Elite.
There's an old is that Black Orpheus? Black old Brazilian film. It's a love story between Black something.
Não, como é que chama cidade? Não é Cidade de Deus, é o outro, é o do Estação, como é que é? Com a Montenegro, com a I'm trying to remember this movie.
Yeah. But the point is, visually those don't look like Hollywood pictures, but they're incredibly strong movies.
Yeah,
right?
it's good. Yeah, it's good.
But I think that's true. I think that it's the cameras, it's DPs understanding film, because even when you say Hollywood films, right? There's great like Roger Deakins, as a for instance, who was a cinematographer, or was Peter Janus that Spielberg uses on a lot of his film. Those are not American guys, right? Those are Europeans, right? That have learned, right? And people have come up together, right? But I think that the attention that we spend to aesthetics, both, and even in, Japan, or like you can go to a Bertolucci film as an example, or Akira Kurosawa, in Japan. So I think historically you've had artists that have really taken the craft seriously, and so they've produced these results that have made their way to mean something in Hollywood.
True.
But I think the future's still bright here, right? People.
Yeah, but one thing I noticed, and I don't know if I'm right about thinking this, but maybe the language, and it plays into our subconscious. When you hear it in Portuguese, like for us, and I even have a project where I'm thinking of like, shooting a film here where the actors are just dialoguing any scene they want. And I'm going to get dubbing actors to dub them in Portuguese, because every time we have, it's hard to explain because, in the United States, you don't watch dubbed movies.
Right.
But here, when you watch a dubbed film, it feels as if it's like, for example, you get a Spanish film or a German film, but it's dubbed, good quality dubbing. You don't know if it's American or if it's Spanish or if it's German, because the actors that dub the Americans, if they're dubbing that Spanish, the quality is good. So sometimes I think that it might be also because of our subconscious. When you were watching, they're speaking Portuguese, it's Brazilian actors, and we automatically look at it differently. I don't know, just
that's interesting. Yeah,
because as our brain works, as we're watching, it's almost like if you watched an American film and you dubbed it in English,
right?
Maybe it would play. It would look weird.
Interesting, but like I don't like watching dubbed films. I'd rather read subtitles. So, and I've seen myself in films like when I'm traveling.
Oh, I've seen myself. Oh, that's great.
Speaking Spanish, German, Italian.
Have you seen in Portuguese or no?
No, but usually I've seen them when I'm in Europe.
Anthony, pesquisa pra gente quem é o dublador dele. Será que dá pra achar isso rápido? Let me see if we can find out who's the dubbing actor. Go ahead.
Oh, from me?
Europe. Yeah.
But I like there's this great new series on Netflix I was just watching. Well, I think House of the Ninja or something like that. And subtitles come up. Now I want to hear in Japanese,
right? But
I'm gonna read, and I'm gonna, because I still, even if I don't understand the language, I want to hear it in the native tongue.
I get you.
I don't want.
It throws me off.
Yeah, because
for me it throws me off.
Really?
If I watch a film in English, I want it in English.
Right.
But in any other language, I'd rather watch it dubbed than subtitled.
In Portuguese.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because if I watch the film, a Spanish film, a Japanese film with subtitle, it throws me off so
visually,
much
to read
that I'm like listening to something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's hard. It's hard, but I just feel like, and here's a funny thing. I could watch a film with subtitles in the native tongue. And I will turn the volume up to hear better.
Oh, okay.
Even if I cannot. Like, I don't want to miss anything. I want to hear, like.
Cool.
And I think I'm just like, especially if it's a language I'm familiar with, like Japanese or Spanish or something else, where I want to like make sure that I was doing that on the plane. Like coming here on the plane, they're giving instructions in Portuguese, right? And the subtitles are in Portuguese. I appreciated that because I'm listening to the Portuguese, but I'm also reading it.
Yeah, that's how you learn.
I'm hearing like, language. Oh, okay, so this is how you say that. So,
You speak another language?
I speak Spanish. Yeah.
Totally.
It depends on what I'm.
How about accents? Because you did a Jamaican accent. Which accent do you prefer to do? Any especially? Okay, hold on. Let me give you a challenge. Do a Russian accent.
I have the worst Russian accent.
That's hard. No, Russian accent is difficult.
Yeah. I've had to speak Russian twice.
Oh, you did?
For jobs, yeah. Which like literally it could take me 2 days to learn like 6 lines in Russian.
Yeah,
I had to do it once on
Chinese also.
on Nikita.
Uh-huh.
And I did it once on the show Billions. Yeah.
In Russian.
I speak Russian. Yeah. But literally I will spend 2 full days
learning the lines.
Like 6 lines. Yeah.
And did you have a Russian coach?
I have a good ear.
So it's like music, like imitating music.
I love that you said that because I feel the same way about music. Like to me, a C note is a C note is a C note anywhere in the world. So when people do accents or dialects, it really bugs me if you don't nail it because to me it's like a note. It's like a musical note. So hit the note. Exactly,
because if you can sing with the singer, sing along with the music, even if you don't speak that language, it means you can achieve it. You know, you can reach it.
Yeah.
Very good.
So that's why I hate bad accents. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Malik, thank you so much. Before we end the interview, I would like for you to look into this camera.
Yes, sir.
And feel free, speak out your heart.
You know what? I'm here in Brazil for the first time. My name is Malik Yoba. You might have seen me from 30 years ago from Cool Runnings and New York Undercover and a bunch of other things. Why Did I Get Married movies and all kinds of TV. And I'm so happy to be here with my man, Raul Ferreira Netto.
Very good.
Okay. My first podcast ever in the history of being in Brazil. Couldn't be with a better person.
Oh, really? What an honor.
You just took my virginity, bro.
I didn't know. Thank you so much.
Cheap date.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
First interview ever in Brazil.
Very good.
Right here.
Well, let's do another one after when you come back.
I'll tell you what I've learned.
Let's schedule that, and we'll definitely have some more to chat.
Yeah.
It'll be very good.
You should come to is he coming to the film summit tomorrow night? If he can? Seems like he should. I don't know what you have planned, but it seems like something you should be at.
I would love to be, and I was talking to Andrea about this. He invited me to go. I was scheduled to travel to Miami tomorrow night.
Oh, you said that, right?
But I might postpone it to Friday. So if I postpone it to Friday, I'll definitely be there, and it'll be my pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. How do you say my pleasure in Portuguese when you meet somebody? What do you say?
Prazer. Prazer.
Prazer?
Yeah,
like Brazil?
A pleasure. No, prazer.
Prazer.
Pleasure.
Oh, like placer.
Grande prazer, a great pleasure.
Like placer in Spanish.
Gran placer.
Right.
¿Hablas español vos si quieres?
Claro que sí. Claro que sí. Dime. ¿Qué quieres
oír? La próxima hablamos todo en español, entonces.
Todo en español. Está bien.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you for accepting this invitation. It's a great honor to know this is your first podcast.
Absolutely.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
The project is amazing, and I'm sure it will go very far.
Thank you.
Gente, foi isso. Prazer imenso conversar com o Malik. Um cara sensacional. Foi uma conversa rápida, mas acabei de saber agora, uma honra saber que foi o primeiro podcast aqui no Brasil que ele participa.
I understood that. First podcast in Brazil.
Exatamente.
Entendo. I heard that, baby.
E eu sou um fã, assim, de verdade, especificamente de um dos primeiros filmes que ele fez, que é o Jamaica Abaixo de Zero, e a gente falou um pouco aqui. E para mim, além de um profissional, como entrevistando outro profissional, é realmente um momento muito, muito, muito legal. E eu agradeço muito a todos vocês que acompanharam essa entrevista. Agradeço ao Malik, agradeço a todos da equipe, agradeço ao André por nos colocar em contato. E espero que você tenha gostado desse papo. A gente vai marcar outros, não tenha dúvida. Agradeço a Porcelaneca, Thiago e Rebeca, vocês que proporcionam com muito carinho as nossas canecas personalizadas. O Malik ganhou a dele também. E eu agradeço que realmente vocês compartilhem esse vídeo com o maior número de pessoas possíveis. A gente fez ele gravado por conta do idioma, mas ele vai continuar aqui no canal de YouTube. Nosso canal está contando com quase 170 mil inscritos, não sei exatamente se até vai ter passado esse número. Comente essa entrevista, curta e inscreva-se aqui no canal. Eu falo do estúdio RFN Audiovisual, aqui em São Paulo, na Avenida Brigadeiro Faria Lima. Acesse para você conhecer os nossos projetos e trabalhos, entre em contato. É isso, pessoal. Muitíssimo obrigado, um grande beijo e abraço. Até a próxima. Bye, bye, Brasil.